Welcome to the Music and Trauma podcast. We're Chris and Terry Potter. We're asking artists, musicians and guests, what are the 3 songs that saved you? And exploring what matters to them about music and mental health.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump in. It's us again, Chris and Terry. And today we have the wonderful Adam Phillips with us.
Hello.
Before we go on, I just need to mention that this podcast, Music and Trauma, the 3 songs that saved you at this point in time, is just a series of 6, which we're going to get an idea of how it's received by people, and then we're really hoping to return and do plenty more. We've got lots of other guests lined up sometime after the summer. So Chris, over to you. Introduce Adam, please.
Adam's an old friend of ours. He's an incredible guitar player.
You're very kind.
It's so true.
With a wealth of experience. He's worked on a myriad of different records and tours with artists as diverse as Cher, Tina Turner, Tom Robinson, Richard Ashcroft, the list goes on. Unbeknown to us, and we only found out today, he also has an incredible solo album of great songs.
Yeah.
We'll play something from that later.
Oh, that's very kind.
Yes,
very kind.
Amazing.
All that and father of 3 as well, which
Indeed.
can't be easy. Welcome, Adam.
Beautiful. Thank you for being here and doing
Thank you for
this.
having me.
Yeah.
It's become a little bit of a trademark that I go around and ask everybody how they're doing at the beginning of one of these podcasts. To make it easier for you, we'll do it first.
Okay.
Do you want me to go first this time?
No, it's okay. I'm quite used to you getting bossy about what's an emotion and what's not an emotion. Yeah, I think it's quite good.
Well, we'll find out. We'll get feedback at some point, I suppose.
Yeah.
Go for it. How are you feeling?
Okay, so I'm quite tense.
I think you were tense last time. That's okay. You can still, it can be
Is it an emotion?
no. Tense is no. Tense isn't an emotion.
Okay, I'm anxious. Feel a little bit underprepared. I'm sure that's all going to come out in the wash. So in a few minutes, it'll all be good. But right in the moment, a bit anxious.
And are you okay to sit there being
Oh,
anxious,
yeah.
or do you need to take a little walk around the garden, or
No. No.
Are you good?
Yeah.
I guess that makes it my turn. I got it when you said that you felt unprepared. I feel a little bit like that too, because this has all come about quite quickly. So how do I feel? I feel, this could get very boring for listeners, couldn't it? I think I'm actually...
We'll edit you out, don't worry.
Yeah, you can edit me out and make it really quick when I come up with my answer. I am happy, actually.
There you go.
Simply happy.
Yeah.
So over to
I'm
you.
probably happy too. I mean, I'm definitely better when I'm working and doing things with like-minded people, which is what I've been doing today.
Lovely.
It sort of filters out things that are always there, making me feel less content. And actually, right now, in this room, pretty content. A little bit nervous.
Into the unknown, isn't it?
Don't quite know how I'm going to sound interesting, but let's see.
Well, just thank you, because we did land this on you, and it is a privilege.
What I liked was the fact that you were touching on things which matter to me. So I'm happy to talk and share experiences, and do enjoy talking to people. The happy, the sad, whatever. I like listening. I like trying to be of some form of assistance.
And that's all that this is about, really.
I think so.
It's
yeah.
just about everybody being human together.
Exactly.
Okay. It's over to you.
Sure. So yeah, let's start with something easy. What's your earliest memory of music?
Okay, so my mother played sort of Scott Joplin ragtime things, and she always fascinated me. I think she read the music, but I had the distinct feeling that she had learnt it as well.
Okay.
Allegedly, she played a bit in a few pubs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it was probably hearing her do that. And I think the sight of the piano in the house was like a very early memory for me. It was this old-looking thing, and I used to sit under it and play with it like all kids do.
Yeah.
So that was probably the earliest thing, and my mum listening very loudly to lots of music,
And what sort of music was that?
Very interesting, my parents, both from Wales. I think my dad, all his family Welsh, all my mother's side of Welsh. They got married in 1963 and then went to the States on a sort of extended honeymoon and lived in Canada for about 4 or 5 years.
Right.
And brought back all sorts of stuff, and I think that's what I started to listen to. I don't know how common that is. There was a bit of radio.
Yeah.
There was a couple of TV channels when I was a kid, it was a different world.
Yeah.
So raiding the record collection, really, and the Beatles, that was it.
Red album or blue album?
It was yes, first of all, the Blue album. And then I kind of went on a bit of a pilgrimage and bought all of them. But I think prior to that, if my memory serves me correctly, they had a reel-to-reel, and they had brought back Sgt. Pepper's from the States on a reel-to-reel, and an album called Yesterday and Today, which was only released in America. They'd recorded it onto a reel-to-reel and brought it back. So I was listening to this reel-to-reel, and it pretty much blew my mind, really.
Yeah.
And a lot of Elvis, Bill Haley, some country music, a bit of Hank Williams. Later on, a lot of Don Williams was played in my house.
Right.
Lots of stuff going on. And then I sort of, through that, made my own little journey.
Yeah, so that's leading on to the next question.
I became really enthused. I must have been about 9. Because I remember Elvis dying. That was 77, and I remember that was a big thing. So I'm like, well, he's singing all these songs and now he's dead. And then I got really into these Beatles records, and a mate of mine at school told me that if I tuned into Radio Luxembourg on a Tuesday night, they had the Beatles hour. So I got my little AM radio and I listened to that. And we wanted to form a band that did Beatles songs. And I heard Taxman, thought it was George playing the guitar. Turns out it was McCartney, I think, on that.
Right.
And that's all I wanted to do. And so I just started trying to play and didn't really know what I was doing, but eventually ended up here.
Yeah.
You began on the piano then?
No, not really. I played, a few chords and stuff, but no, not really a pianist. I really started with the guitar. I didn't initially know what I was doing because I'm left-handed and I play right-handed. And my cousin had shown me a couple of chords, and that started me off. And then I did get a really good teacher, a chap called Dave Bowen, in the West Country where I grew up, and he just threw music at me and did that thing that all good teachers should do and just sort of lit the candle.
Oh, nice. Did it come naturally immediately for you?
Some of it did, to a point. I mean, I remember distinctly hearing a 12-bar blues rock and roll progression, and I remember being struck in my bedroom with the idea that whatever was sung over the first 4 bars, as I would learn it is, kind of works over the next 4 bars, and nothing much has changed, but the underneath has changed. And I remember that having this profound effect on me.
An epiphany.
Yeah. That was kind of, there's something in there. And that
kind of simplifies everything.
Yeah, and that became a bit of a journey for me. And moving on from the Beatles, there were 3 cassettes that I got. It's a pretty bonkers collection of music, but there was the Jimi Hendrix singles album. There was an Eric Clapton compilation album that went back to the Blues Breakers and all of that. And then there was a Santana album called Moonflower, and my world just blew my mind. That's all I did, was go to my room and try and make noises. And it took a while to understand where any of it was coming from. And I've said this to people now that I'm, in my 50s, how the world is so different. Because after that, I went further, but I got B.B. King live at the Regal, which is just one of my favourite albums ever. And when I heard these notes being bent, I didn't really know yet how that was happening. It wasn't like there was YouTube. And I could go,
you couldn't see it.
So, my brother had a Shadows record, and I saw that it had a whammy bar. I thought, they must be doing that. Well, I haven't got one of them. Or, what am I going to do? And I remember I must have been about 10, 11 years old, just sitting with his guitar, and I bent a string, and it was like this amazing moment, which I still think is quite a joyous thing. I'd rather have had that than here's how you do it.
Yeah.
Because there was some sort of quest, discovery.
Found the treasure.
And that's not to knock.
We've spent the afternoon doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to knock where we're at now, and I go on there all the time to learn how to do things now, but I think at that time it was quite exciting.
Just the mystery of it.
The mystery.
Yeah.
So that's where it all started.
Once you'd started learning the guitar, what was the path from that point onwards? Which path did you take?
Like any kid, really, I wanted to do it, and that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I knew quite early on, through my teacher and stuff, I don't think I was ever big-headed about it, because I knew I was a little person in a small town and I could play a few things, but I knew how great I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I never really probably thought, I'm going to try and do this as a way of life, but I think through certainly my teenage years, music became so important to me, because although I'm lucky that I had a reasonably nice upbringing in terms of food on the table and stuff like that, I had a very tumultuous emotional upbringing, because my parents split when I was 14, and there was a lot of emotional trauma, for want of a better word.
Okay.
And the thing that I went to was music. That was the space where I felt safe. That was the space where I lost all of that, where I could drown out the shouting and everything. So I don't think I ever went, oh, I'm going to do this for a career, but it was really important to me to do it. And so somehow I ended up doing it.
Makes me think of the conversation we were having earlier in the garden. We were talking about not attaching to anything when you get into that zone with something like music and creativity.
For sure.
That there's not an agenda.
There's not anything, there's just you and that music and what it's making you feel.
In those moments, yeah.
It was very much a safe place for me. You know, I did all the stuff that kids do. I used to lock the door and pretend I was in front of a
doing your
huge
homework.
crowd. Yeah, doing air guitar.
Oh, the air guitar and the hairdryer.
We all did that. It's got to do that. So yeah, and then somehow, I followed it through. I did go to college. I did a diploma in popular music, and if I had that opportunity again, I would really learn something, but at the time I was far too busy just wasting my time in the canteen. It's ridiculous. Youth is wasted on the...
Everyone's forced into education when it's just like, it's such a time to play.
It's such a time to play, yeah. I mean, it was brilliant though, because it's the first time I got to play with good musicians, and it was a brilliant thing for me.
And how did that process progress?
Well, when I finished that, I was like, what am I going to do now? And I was living in Manchester and I was playing in some bands, and in many ways I was enjoying myself, really. But I always thought, I've got to try and get down to London. I don't know why. Some inner voice. Yeah. Got to go down there. And I couldn't really do it. I couldn't drive a car. I didn't have any money. It was all a bit shambolic, really. So I enrolled eventually, skipping forward, I found that this diploma could get me on the second year of a degree. Nice. A modular degree doing English and music at what was then Brunel University. I thought, well, that sounds like a good idea if I can get on that. And I got on that. And I didn't do very much music when I was there. I mainly did English because my diploma had counted a lot towards my music modules. But the best thing about that was that the campus, it's no longer there, was right next to the River Thames in Isleworth. And I saw a houseboat for rent and went...
I was going to say you got an affinity.
So I ended up renting that houseboat, and many boats later I now live on a boat in the same place. Wow. So it's obviously important calling for me.
Yeah. You were supposed to be there.
That's great.
But yeah, one thing, you know what it's like, just one thing leads to another, and I would go and play any gig I could get for whatever I could get. Get back and then go to my lectures, and at the end of that I was doing some touring with Tom Robinson, amazing singer-songwriter and dear friend, and I thought, maybe I'll just sack it off, but I worked out that I could do both, so I finished the degree. So I went straight from finishing that into more work.
How did that gig with Tom come about?
Well, a musician friend of mine, wonderful bass player called Winston Blissett, said, why don't you come and have a jam with Tom? And it was really lovely, from the off, really. He became a very, very important person in my life. Love him dearly.
That's
a great encourager.
Great encourager. So that was your first experience of working in
really,
music,
yeah.
right?
Certainly in terms of, getting on a bus, going somewhere, getting off, playing a show.
Getting paid.
Getting back on, that was probably the first time I was doing that. Before that, it was just lots and lots of gigs.
Can I just ask the question, was it joyful, like from the get-go?
Yeah.
When you were working with him, it wasn't a job?
I was genuinely excited by it. And it's great that you can have those moments.
Yeah. And you're still there.
And I'm still there many years later,
there.
He still employs me. Yeah. Lovely man.
Great.
But what a career that you've had and you continue to have. I mean, it's amazing that's just
the way I think
launch
of it,
pad.
and I don't know if maybe this is just wishful thinking, but someone once told me the metaphor of the swimming pool, because I like swimming. Yeah. And when you go to the swimming pool and it's really busy, it's not like this now, because since COVID you have to book your swimming.
I know, right?
But it used to be like,
we have that.
You just dive in. Yeah. And you'd go and sometimes you'd sit on the side and there'd be 18 people going around the fast loop, and you're like, there's no room for me in there. And the worst thing you can do is sit on the side of the pool and think, shall I come back later? Just hoon it in, and you'll do about 4 or 5 really uncomfortable lengths where you're kind of getting hit by people. After a while, someone will get out, someone else will get out, someone else will realise the pace you're going at. And before you know it, the pool will be accommodating you, doing the speed you want to do.
So on my wavelength.
And I just thought that's kind of is what it's all about, and even music's a bit like that. There's millions of things I can't even begin to do on the guitar. I wish I could. But, somehow if you're bringing your heart to something, if you're bringing your soul to something and your intent to something, most people, if they're the people you want to be working with, will accommodate that and work with with you. I believe that to
Yeah,
be true.
I can get a sense of like you
Most of
stepping
my-
into a situation with an artist you've not worked with before, and just having that exchange of energy, I suppose, and just a sense of each other. And
Yeah.
I think that's where you've got to begin from, isn't it?
I think so, because you got to spend a lot of time with people. You've got to be able to hang a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's quite important.
Especially if you're coming at it from a creative perspective rather than just showing up to work for somebody.
Completely. Certainly if you're being employed in that situation, you're working towards the common goal, which is the song and making those things great. It's not about what you think it should be, so you leave that, and if you're lucky enough, someone will eke that out of you anyway. That'll get in there somewhere. But
Yeah. Beautiful.
So, tell us about your album that you've managed to hide from us
you.
for the last 10 years.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
Oh my
so
goodness.
I think what happened with that really was that I had a bunch of songs. There was a period when I was writing a lot, and I was very lucky that someone helped. Mark Taylor, great producer, helped me. I'd played on lots of his records, and he kind of helped facilitate me make that record, largely in downtime. And I really enjoyed the process of making the record. And I look back now and I'm very glad I documented that time, because I didn't have kids, my life was in a different place, and we finally put it to bed in about 2015 and put it out. At which point I had my first child, which is the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to me. But at the same time, sheer panic. How do I put food on the table? I better try and get as much work as I can. But I think beyond that, I hadn't really thought about the process of what it would be like to put your name to something and sell something and put your head above the parapet. And I've always found that stuff quite difficult. And the world had definitely changed. It definitely was a bit more, Facebook was mad, everything going on. And I'm not brilliant at all that stuff. I wouldn't say I'm reclusive at all, but I'm quite a private person, and I never really feel like I've got that much to say that's that important, Those worries, I suppose, allowed me in some ways to just put it out there and see what happens. And the truth is, you put it out there, someone will find it. And I am quite touched. I sometimes get a little thing from someone in Arizona who's just downloaded your song for 90p, and you go, oh, that's quite amazing.
Their songs are just beautiful, just hidden gems. Like,
after your kind words today, I'm going to have a stern word with myself and maybe try and do something with it, or put some visuals to it or something. I'm quite proud of it in the sense that it captured a whole idea of going from absolutely nothing to something. And
we'll play out today with a song of your choosing as well. I have to say, the first song of yours I listened to was A Song for Every Man. I felt like this song has been around since the year dot, and many, many people must have covered this song.
Well, that's a lovely
but
thing.
it was just so familiar, but it was just so original at the same time.
Well, that's a lovely thing to hear, so thank you very much.
But what I'm really experiencing of you is that sense of how much you give in terms of your music, and how much you're there to support artists and make them sound great.
I mean, it's so enjoyable though when it's right and you're part of something. Even as an ensemble, just in a rhythm section, when something's amazing, it's the best feeling in the world, You occasionally get these moments where which is what I think everyone strives for, when you have left conscious thought, you're just in a sound.
Yes.
You're not even sure what you're doing as part of the sound.
I'm going completely off-piste with this, but I am fascinated to know, in terms of the different places you've worked, the different people you've worked for, are you happy to mention a few of those favourites?
Of course. For me, I can't really divorce it from the fact that I was reading something about imposter syndrome. Apparently a lot of people who are pretty blooming good feel that way, and I've probably always felt that way. The joy for me is when that all stops and you just got relationships with people and you can just relax and let the music happen,
Which is obviously why your work is so called for, that relationship that you seem to have. I can only imagine. I've only witnessed it with certain people, but I mean...
Well, I think, and also what's nice about my sensibilities, because I write as well, and I've got that side to me, I've always got that to get me out in a way. Like, I can get closer to the song. I'm sort of not just listening to what this can do. I'm trying to think about the whole thing.
That's so important.
Which I think is quite important. Back to what you were saying, Chris, about that record. I think I had to do that record, and I'm really lucky that someone helped me do it, because I sort of went through quite a few years of being in the wilderness a little bit, relationship disasters and confidence issues and all sorts of things. And I don't really listen to it that much, but I'm aware that it's probably about loss, that record. It strikes me as being pretty much about things which happened to me, other things which are a bit more elaborated on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad that I've got that documented, because I was really feeling those things, and I still do, really. But I've just got another focus because I've got the joy of my kids and the almighty wake-up call of having to be an adult, you know.
That tremendous shift
Whereas,
from like, and it wasn't lost on me that the date of the album and the date and Ruben's age, you know, it's kind of like,
it's kind of okay.
Whoa, here you are.
You know, I mean, there's that chronic introspection when you're artistic, and you know, you have to kind of get out your own way sometimes. That's why you need collaborations, you need people, you need friends, you need
nudges as well.
You need nudges and encouragement and all that
so
stuff.
True.
You know, that's what I'm trying to learn now and bring forward to my children and onwards. I don't think I said, I've got to make a record because I want to hear it on the radio. I think I just was trying to make those songs exist, and I knew that it wasn't going to be just the Sideman album of like bits of cool guitar or whatever. It was about those songs and what they meant to me, and I should probably go and give it another listen.
Well, you know, I hope that people listening to this will go and give it a listen as well. But that brings us to the first song that saved you. Are you open to sharing that with us?
Yeah, of course. I used to do a version of it, and I always used to say this is the saddest song I know, and I think it is. It's called Weary Blues from Waiting by Hank Williams.
Unfortunately, right now, we haven't been able to clear the licence to play this song. When that happens, we'll update this episode to include it. In the meantime, please click on the link in the show notes to hear the song in full.
It's pretty magical, I think.
Amazing voice.
Yeah, incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
You think about sadness in that context. I mean, he's a pretty tragic character, and it's bleak, but I don't know why. It makes me feel not alone, and it's not analysed. It's not thought about. It's not like there's no one going, oh, you know, you can't really say that because that's you're expressing more of a sort of selfish love, you know, because you don't know, you know. No, there's none of that. There's just pure outpouring of I feel this loss. And there's something really beautiful about that.
You're witnessing.
You don't need to
person,
analyse it. You're feeling it.
You're feeling
you know,
it.
you can do that later when you're feeling a bit better. You can go, oh, you know what? Maybe I wasn't looking at that situation exactly right. That's what life's about, isn't it?
It's nice to hear records like that as well, that are just, you know, a moment in a room.
Completely, It's pretty magic, isn't it? You know, it's kind of like a bit of a, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it does.
What was the moment that you first heard that?
I don't think I heard that through my parents. I actually think it was a friend when I was in my teens.
Did it strike you immediately?
Yeah, and initially the voice just grabbed me. And it's quite a strange structure that I love. It's 3 chords, but then he puts this other chord in to make that the chorus, and it works so beautifully. Yeah, I just was taken by, like, something spoke to me, I don't know. Particularly that second verse, when it's through tears, I watch young lovers as they go strolling by. Of all the things that might have been, Lord forgive me if I cry, you know, it's just like, how many, you know, that's just such a universal feeling. And you could be 15 and it could be your first love, you could be 60 and going through your 3rd divorce. It's not going to go away, that, you know.
It's something about the essence of a song like that, which is so much more than the lyric and the music. It's just something, it is just everything that somebody's almost transmitting, don't you think?
Completely. It's kind of haunting as well.
It stays with you out there somewhere, rather than, it's not all in the body even.
I don't feel sad when I listen to it, I just feel connected.
Right, okay. That's interesting.
I just feel connected to important things.
So it's not the sort of song that you'd necessarily listen to when you're feeling sad.
It's just catharsis, I think. Whatever you're going to feel, whatever we're all going to be up against.
Been here before.
Someone's felt it.
Does it make you feel the same way now that it did when you were in your teens?
Yeah, that's a good question, isn't it? It probably does, really. Yeah, I'd say it's pretty similar. You know, sometimes you hear different things in the simplest music, you know. Sometimes you might hear a different little way he sings a line or whatever. But, yeah, it just sounds very profound to me.
So you've touched on it, but if you had to answer the question how that song's helped you, what would be your succinct response to that, if you've got one?
I think it is that feeling that if Hank Williams could drink a bottle of something and sing that, you don't need to feel ashamed for feeling low.
Yeah.
You don't need to be embarrassed by it.
No.
You don't need to feel silly because you've got deep emotions for another human being or a dog or whatever it is, you know, whatever it is. Because for me in my life, you know, I have had periods of, to me, intense lows. And they've normally been, you know, the product of a trauma or a specific thing has set me into that spiral. And I've learned, you know, through a bit of therapy and just getting older and to kind of avoid certain pitfalls to make that experience worse than it needs to be. But I can still feel that way, you know, pretty easily. And I try to reset myself to be a little bit kinder to myself, to not go that way. But nonetheless, when I have done in the past, you know, you get that thing sometimes when you've recovered from a situation, you get like a little memory and you go like that, you wince and you think, oh God, you shouldn't feel like that, because those closest to you and dearest to you, they're never going to make you feel like that. We're all going through
That's what I wanted to come to, really.
stuff,
It's like,
you know, and it's normal.
What you're saying is, I think our experience, and actually doing this podcast as well, has been definitely our experience. This is everybody, but people aren't saying it enough. And it's just that, you know, we've all had really low times. We've all had the depths of the deepest, darkest challenges. And sometimes when we're down there, exactly what you were saying about that song, you feel so goddamn alone. But we're all in it together, actually. And more can we just say, you know, I feel like crap, and so I'm not coming to work today. I'm not, you know, why? I don't know. I can't tell you. Can I just have today? I'm listening to you saying exactly that. We all believe that we're the only ones in those moments.
You do, yeah. And you look around you, through tears I see young love, you know, whatever that is, that's around you. And you feel in a different place, and that's why it's good to talk about it, because it can be a dangerous place to be feeling like that.
For too long.
For me, I just have learned, I guess, through those experiences to, you know, try and be as here as I can. So probably not a good time for me to drink beer or, you know, have a smoke or something. You know, try and be sort of here because you need to be when you're in that place, and be kind to yourself. Try and eat something.
Try and eat something. Yeah,
sounds so dull, doesn't it?
But no, but it's so true, because if you've got those really big feelings going on, then
it's horrible.
When we try and mask them, when we try and have a drink or do whatever it is that we do, all we're doing is just squashing them down. I mean,
it doesn't work.
There is actually the solution, I've come to understand, is to just sit in it.
Yeah.
Actually feel it. And we talk about music, but for me, sticking my headphones on, listening to the saddest songs, the angriest songs, whatever, you know, but actually let it fester for a while and then get uncomfortable and let it pass. It's okay, because the more we stuff it down and we try and run away from it, then the more it sticks around.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I think there's a degree on the scale where you can really affect, you know, that sadness. Being aware, having perspective, having awareness, having, as I say, having good people around you, doing the right things, making good decisions. I'm lucky that I'm here and I want to be here. And but some people go too far. And
what does safety look like for people? It's not as simple as being in a safe container. It's, I mean, in the form-based sense, but who are the people around you? And if there's nobody, who can you lean into? Who can you reach out to? We've got a number of helplines on our website for people, if ever anyone's listening, that does feel desperate. Also, who do you know that maybe you could just have a cup of coffee with and just let it out, because you can bet your bottom dollar that it might not be the same situation for them, but the level of emotions we've all experienced at different times, right?
Certainly when you reach points where, I always used to describe it as like I'd go to the washing machine or the dryer, my thoughts are just going round in this dryer, you know, and I can't control the dryer. You know, it's just going absolutely mad. And if I open the door to take a look, they all just leap out at me, you know.
Yeah.
When you're in that place, you know, you've got to put your arms around yourself.
That's a really important
point. You're not going to be
right?
able to function particularly well at certain things. So set yourself tiny little tasks.
Because we don't always necessarily find ourselves in safe spaces with safe people. What I mean by that is not people that are against you, but
It's
people
like
that you can't necessarily confide in.
But you might be in a fragile place where someone innocently might really affect you. So just pay attention at that time.
Give yourself,
be nice to yourself
some of that. You know, sit with it for a while. But there's always going to be somebody you can reach out to and have a neutral conversation in terms of somebody really hearing you, actively listening and actually being curious about you, rather than, you know, engaging in a to and fro with somebody who's just trying to make you feel better. Some people with the best intentions might meet you in that place and go, oh, I'll tell you what you should do.
Yeah.
It's not always helpful, is it?
No, sometimes not. But you know, like I say, you can look back a lot on this stuff when you get further down the line, you know.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But I think when you're in a low place, you got to ride it out.
Yeah.
It's difficult, isn't it, though,
really kind
sometimes
to yourself.
you know, to actually recognise that you feel terrible and then actually do that thing of welcoming that in and feeling it. It's quite, you know, it's hard.
How would you do that? In a situation where maybe you're having really going off piste here, by the way, but that's okay. It's all under the same sort of heading of music and trauma. But I'm just really interested in those days when you wake up and the weight of the world on you. What are your things that you... I've got ideas about what I think you might do, but what do you think you do when you...
I'll sit and deliberately focus on that feeling. And I still don't find that easy to do. To be honest, I never managed to do it for very long, but I definitely get a sense that when I do that, it does help to dissipate the feeling.
Yeah, it just starts to dissolve gradually, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How about you, Adam?
Yeah, for me, it's always been baby steps with that stuff, because it's normally one thing that set me into that emotional space. There's always a background of, you know, other life stuff that can get me pretty fed up, like every human being, and I'm learning to try and get better at dealing with those things so that they don't stack up. And with those instances, I would probably just try and distract myself as much as possible, whether it would be go and have a swim till I can't stand up anymore. But if it's the specific emotional pain thing, when I feel strong enough, do exactly that. Try and habituate it, try and say what's the worst that it could be, because it does sort of dissipate it. But I can't always do that, or I've not been able in the past to do that when I'm right in the eye of the storm.
Yeah.
It's come a bit afterwards.
I think
that
value...
the eye of the storm, I've been more sort of like...
I think we all are, aren't we?
Just cotton wool, please.
Yeah.
But there's that sense of like, I've learned to, with a lot of practice, to pause. But we were saying this before, we were talking about it with our kids, right? Where you suddenly go, I'm in this situation, and, you know, but there's a remembering in you, which is like, I can do this a different way. But it doesn't always come immediately, and sometimes there's some repair that needs to happen. But in those moments, creating a bit of space, and then maybe taking ourselves out, giving ourselves a bit of quiet time. But it's hard. The pain, I think, is there to actually teach us that if we just feel it, it will just do its own thing. It's the mind storm that gets me. Do you find?
That's the worst thing about
it's
it.
like
It's
all the
repeat.
thoughts you
and
go...
it just sends things on a repeat cycle. And a Buddhist friend, a fantastic musician friend of mine, and he always used to describe it as a child's, you know, there's pop-up books and all the things. So you could start to get to a point where you see those feelings that are out of control when the mind's racing.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I've seen you today already.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are again, you know, and it would pop up at you, and after a while you just go, oh, look, they're popping up. But I'm actually not turned off, but I'm just not resonating with everything like I did.
Imagine if you took every single thought that popped into your head and you fixed on it and you analysed it. Can you imagine how miserable we would be, how we would get nothing? I mean,
nothing done, no.
If you can treat every thought that way, as irrelevant almost, as unnecessary, I mean, it doesn't mean we can't plan, it doesn't mean we can't exist and do and be, but...
You're not your thoughts.
You're not your thoughts.
Quite important. I mean, you can't be, can you? Scientifically, you can't be, really.
No. I love the exploration around what we would all do, you know, when we're having those big feelings, and sometimes it can be overwhelming, and can we just be with that and be okay?
Yeah.
You know, it's okay because we all feel it. That's really completely. What I got from that exploration just then. Coming back to you and the songs, and I just wondered on that Hank Williams song, what creative inspiration you got from all of that?
I just love the sound of it, really. I love the beat-up guitar and the simplicity of it. Definitely a mood. It probably had quite an influence on the way that I would try and write something or perform something. There's a real simplicity to it. It's deceptively simple. I quite like that. You know, it's just happening.
I'm experiencing that in your music, so I mean, I always didn't need to ask that question, to be honest.
There's something about it that captures me, captures a mood, and it just sounds cool, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you have a song too?
As I said, many, many songs, aren't there? But A Simple Twist of Fate by Bob Dylan from Blood on the Tracks.
Alrighty.
Unfortunately, right now, we haven't been able to clear the licence to play this song. When that happens, we'll update the episode to include it. In the meantime, please click on the link in the show notes to hear the song in full. Yeah, it's following a pattern, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is follow your pattern.
Yeah, I love that song. I think, well, the whole record that's from Blood on the Tracks is just such a beautiful, beautiful album.
I've got a really big question for you. Who were you in relation to that
To the
piece of
song?
music? Yeah.
Well, I think it's such a bittersweet, romantic piece of music. He's painting these pictures of this couple that get together and then they walk by the canal and they go to the hotel. And it kills me when he woke up, the room was bare, he didn't see her anyway. He told himself he didn't care and threw the windows open wide. It's very beautiful, even though it's sad.
Yeah.
I think as a musician, you are inherently a bit romantic. You can't avoid that really, especially if you're a guitar player. And it just resonated with me. And as I listened to it, I realised he's done something so beautiful by this because he's depersonalised it. He hasn't poured his heart out at all until the last verse.
Yeah.
And then he just puts that little twist on, which is so powerful. And he questions, people tell me it's a sin to know and feel too much in. I probably was the person saying that at that moment, the narrator. I'm kind of going, yeah, it's not a sin, is it, to know and feel these things? It's part of life. And if Bob Dylan's loved and lost and got through it, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I suppose it's a bit of that. And I just love the sound of it and the pictures that it paints in my mind. And
it is a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, that idea of, a romantic encounter, and maybe it's something that's not supposed to last forever, but it's still part of your life. It's got all of that in it. Doesn't really answer your question, does it?
Well, yeah, it does, because what you're bringing is the idea of life just takes a load of different turns. And then there's that control word. We all think that we can make a big difference to that. And so we get so involved in trying to change the nature of things. It challenges us, right?
Definitely.
If you're seeing yourself as the narrator in that story and relating to it, it's kind of like you say, Bob Dylan's gone through it. Everybody's gone through a version of it.
Yeah.
And when you're in it, you do feel like it's just you.
You feel really alone and lost and, your gut's hanging out on the sidewalk. Yeah. But actually, you're kind of not, and it will get better. And also, it's not anyone's fault.
No, it's nobody's fault. Nobody's to blame.
It's not about that. It's so many complicated things go into human relations. And
what if we could always just embrace that idea that everything's unfolding perfectly, regardless of how uncomfortable it is?
Which is a really hard realisation, but it is kind of true. It's a bit like I said earlier, you haven't got to the end of the book. It's okay. It's very romantic, that song as well. There's something about the travelling minstrel about it that I get. Yeah, I just think it's wonderful.
If I were to ask a question how it's helped you, I think you've already explained that, which is like it's the sense of that isolation that we all feel at different times isn't real.
No, it's unique to you in the sense that the individual or whatever the loss is going on, it's unique to you. But the feeling is a shared one for anyone that's got a heart, and that's most people.
It is most people, yeah.
That's the thing about music, isn't it wonderful that you can have somewhere to put a thought or a feeling and an emotion that isn't just taking it out on the squash court or whatever. You can actually put something somewhere, and not all of it is going to turn out to be as good as that. He's pretty good, but you can still do it. And you know what, you might heal yourself through it. Write a poem, write something down.
Just write down what you're feeling.
Write down what you're feeling. It'll help, and you might come back to it and go, oh my God, what was I thinking? But
that's a beautiful thing.
But that in itself is beautiful, because it's all moving, it's all changing all the time. The other thing that I've taken from those times where I've been in those places is that if you were recovering from heartache or loss or something not great, some of it's joyous. The rebuilding of learning to like yourself and love yourself is really powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And then you forget it again, and then you go round and round again. But it's not all doom and gloom.
Something that really helps me is remembering that this is a huge space of growth for me right now. I can't figure or fathom it, and it doesn't feel like it. But you always look back and go, whoa, I grew through something.
And you're a damn sight healthier to just have that broken moment than trying to pretend that it doesn't touch you, and that doesn't really lead to...
No, so true.
Happiness, I don't think.
I can even bring a powerful example of that, actually. And it is disclosure, but it's okay, because we have permission from our daughter. She went through a lot at a certain time in her life when, yeah, she really didn't want to be here, and everything was too much. And for us as parents, we were in crisis mode. We didn't know whether we were coming or going. So some days you just thought, can we get through this? And we managed to hold on somehow, and we did a lot of work, our own work, by the way, and our child benefited from us doing our own work. But what huge growth and what huge connection we now have as a result of something like that, which was catastrophic. There are so many examples. I'm sure everybody's got their own personal examples. In the moment, you just think you just really can't go on.
I'm sure we've all felt like that at certain points, and it's a question of what you do in those moments and how you react, really. We were talking about it earlier, about sitting in the feeling, weren't we?
Yeah.
You know, that's an important part.
It is, but in those moments where it's all too much, it's like sometimes that sentiment is just to escape, isn't it? Or sometimes just to create yourself a bit of space before you can come to that point. It's really helpful. When people are in those really dark places and they're overwhelmed, I think just a little bit of focus, and sometimes maybe the focus is, well, Bob Dylan's gone through it. You know, maybe it is as simple as Adam Phillips has gone through it. Oh, okay, all right, this too shall pass, as they say. That's a powerful pause right there, isn't it?
Completely, and I think that thing of perspective that you can get to once you've gone through the falling apart bit, you gain perspective, and then that's a really important thing.
It is. A connection with other people
exactly
matters so much, because you know, for us it was like, oh wow, other people have gone through this. We thought we thought we were the only ones, and then it was like,
it felt very much like it was into the unknown.
Yeah, and then you go, okay, no, there's communities for people in the situation we're in. Oh, okay, let's just check in with that then and take what we need from it.
Yeah, you have to do it alone, but you have to do it with others too.
Talk about it.
Yeah.
Or just pick up the phone and call a complete stranger who's there to help you.
I've called the Samaritans in my life, and thank God for them.
One of the resources for us when we were going through it was Childline and all of those kind of places like Young Minds. They point you, they signpost you. And it is helpful.
Imagine the times when none of that was in place. You know.
Yeah.
Got to be thankful, really.
We do.
Yeah.
Shall I tell you my Bob Dylan dream?
Oh, you must now.
It's fabulous. So, and I've never been in the presence of Bob Dylan. He's a bit of a hero to me. But I had this dream, that, funnily enough, when I was in having a bit of a bad time with things, and this dream came to me. In my dream, I'd inexplicably been given the gig with Bob Dylan. Because it was a dream. It wasn't like I had a phone call or someone had said, you know, you got to learn this to be here, fly you to here. None of that. I just was there. I just walked through a door and I was on stage and I was playing something and I'd never heard it before, and I was kind of playing and there was like a segue into another tune. There were like 4 downbeats, quite quick. And they were only like major triads, simple chords, but they were kind of dissonant, and I just had never heard it. And I said, oh, what's that? You go, is that a G to a... And I asked the keyboard player, and the keyboard player, oh yeah, it's just... And as the keyboard player went to tell me what it is, I looked around and I heard this voice, and I saw Bob Dylan and his manager stood like 6 feet from me. And Bob Dylan kind of had his arms crossed with a cowboy hat, and he turned to his manager and he said, I got fired instantly on the spot, basically. He goes, get me so-and-so, like that. And I remember going, well, hang on, what? And then 8-year-old me just crumbled. And I sort of got down to kind of take my guitar lead out of the amp. And as I looked to my left, my eldest son, Reuben, was stood there. And Reuben went, Dad? I said, yeah. He goes, what are you doing? He goes, well, I'm going now, you know. And he said, well, that's not fair, Dad. You've never heard the piece of music before. Don't let anyone speak to you like that. You're brilliant.
Brilliant.
And I went, and I stood back up, and I went, and I leaned over to assert myself with Bob. And Bob wasn't there anymore. Bob turned into this little brat in a baseball cap, and he was about 9 years old, this little kid.
Right.
All kind of puffed up with a bit of jewellery.
Yeah.
And he wasn't anyone at all. I was a bit confused, but I was just about to berate him, and then I woke up. And I thought, that's just a brilliant dream, isn't
That's brilliant. It says so much in that.
It says loads, doesn't it? About inner confidence and all of it, you know. But Reuben in power, he just said, Dad, come on.
Bless him.
You know, I think it's a great dream, isn't it?
That's brilliant.
Have you told him about that dream?
Yeah. I told him.
Because your inner child met him at the same age, right?
That's right.
That's so cool.
You know, and it was just like that thing of facing the fear.
Yeah.
doing the thing that's hard to you.
Yeah.
You know, assertion's been quite hard to me in my life, but and I went to do it, and it all crumbled into a different scene.
Yeah.
Don't think Bob's going to listen to this, is he? You never know, though.
You
You
just
never
don't know. So what's song number 3? Are you ready for that one?
There is a real theme here with heartache and loss, but this one, I think it's up there with Dylan lyrically. It's a perfect lyric, and also 3 chords, man. He writes, a whole song is around 3 chords. The way he does it is amazing, and I think he kind of sums up sort of the human condition, sort of love. Anyway, it's a song by Bruce Springsteen called One Step Up.
Let's hear it.
Sadly, we're not able to play this song right now due to a delay in the licensing process. We intend to update this episode as soon as possible, but for now, if you can, please pause the episode and click on the link in the show notes to enjoy the tune in full.
As a songwriter,
Yeah.
it's up there, because he just paints these pictures of brokenness.
It's very authentic. As
It's
a
very
song.
authentic, and it is Americana. He's American, it is, but, you know,
Yeah.
I woke up this morning, you know, the house was cold.
Sure.
Checked the furnace, it wasn't burning. Went and hopped in my old Ford, kicked the engine, it wasn't turning. We've been teaching each other some hard lessons lately. There's all this kind of background to this. There's obviously a very painful situation here, and then the next verse, he's like, everything's dysfunction. The bird's not singing.
Isn't that how
The
it
girl
goes?
outside the church in June isn't, you know, there's nothing going good.
Yeah.
And then when he gets to the middle, when he is one line where he sings, you know, I look at myself, I don't see the man I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, that just made me.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy, isn't
It's
it?
pretty heavy, yeah.
Oh, we put so much pressure on ourselves, don't we? We really do have a sense of, like, we've got an agenda for ourselves all the time. Like,
Well, and I think with so much pressure to succeed, to be this, be that, it's not really fair on people, really. No. And everything's very in the way we're fed information.
Yeah.
Here's the soundbite of something, the horrific plane crash. Now, anyway, in other news, that's
right.
how all our lives are being.
Yeah. Let's move on.
And it's a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
You know. Just trying to stand upright.
Yeah.
Pay some bills or whatever it is. It's all just noise.
But you know what you said?
Noise.
You said earlier, when I picked up my guitar, I lost 3 hours and it was gone. Isn't that beautiful? Tell me about that.
I haven't done it for a while in that sense, but I was just messing around trying to create something. And, you know, I just realised that time passed. I felt so alive. Well, you know that feeling when you first, I don't know if it's just me, if you first wake up in the morning and there's that millisecond sometimes before my children jump on me, but there's a millisecond where you kind of don't know, not just where you are, but you don't know who you are sometimes. You have this, like, you don't really, nothing's making much sense. And I always, when that happens, the first thing that comes to me is a number. When I've grasped, okay, I'm alive. This all happens in a blink of an eye, but, you know, and then there's a number. I always think, it's okay, I'm in my 30s. I always have this thought, I'm in my 30s, and I go, oh my God, I'm in my 30s. And then I wake up, no, I'm 53. And I open my eyes and go, oh. But I've got a Buddhist friend I was telling that story to, and they were saying to me, that's who you really are. That
when all the other things haven't come in.
They haven't come in.
Piled in.
That's the real you. That's the breathing you. That's the in the body you. You know, you're alive and you're aware of awareness, but nothing else has arrived yet. Magic.
Yeah.
Magic.
It's like you've got beneath this consciousness.
There's
and
that
you've
going
got,
on all the time. And when you're feeling pretty low and lost, just try and realise that sensation, that leg on sofa, breathing.
Body's breathing itself.
Although someone told me a really
same thing.
mental thing the other day. They were talking to me about atoms, because I'm not very scientific. They're saying that, don't atoms repel? Aren't we technically hovering just slightly above the sofa? Is that true?
I've no idea. All I know is that...
Apparently that's a thing. If you
nothing's
were to,
actually touching anything.
Yeah.
That's completely blown my tiny mind.
Well, you could follow that through to quantum physics and the idea that matter doesn't even exist. You know, there's nothing that just suggests that it's anything more than space.
Yeah.
Like if you picture the space in this room, like we're all existing within the space, and that's been compared to a conscious awareness.
Yes.
Like so, and everything, and the thoughts that come in and the objects that come in. You know, you're effectively, you are the space. and the thoughts are coming in to the space, and what you see and what you witness is coming into the space, but you are the space. And that's quite a contemplation.
Knew my physics A-level would come in handy.
Brilliant. But yeah, have you ever had that moment where you wake up, I can wake up and then, there's no thought, there's nothing, but I'm definitely not in a sleep state anymore. And then the second I recognise it, all the noise,
appears.
It all appears. So I'm learning to try and do that in reverse. So the noise comes in, and then I try to notice that whole, okay, there's a load of chatter that didn't exist prior.
Yep.
So I wonder how it might be to just silence. It takes practice, but it is doable, right?
That's a new phenomenon for me, really. It's only really happened to me in the last couple of years, that.
Which bit?
The thing about waking up and then having a period of a few seconds where there's nothing, and then being conscious of everything piling in. And
it does, though, doesn't it? You actually
fighting for
realise that
space. And,
it actually starts to just appear like,
Yeah.
oh my God, and there's that,
Yeah.
And if you went down a rabbit hole with any one of those thoughts, sometimes you might get one that's just not leaving you alone. And I think you touched on this earlier. Going into a bit of an inquiry with that, it was just like, well, that matters to me because, okay, that's the worst case scenario, that could happen. And then what? And ultimately, you end up in a place where it's like, it's okay. And then you can turn it on its head and go, is this actually true? So these little inquiries I've found that you can really drill all the way down to the bottom. You think you're going to get to a place that's horrendous. Terrible, terrible things might happen, but the truth of it is, by the time you've explored it that far, there's a part of you that goes, okay, well, seriously?
Absolutely, and you're prophesising on things without all the, that's not a given that that's where you go, It's like you can be so worried about a lot of things that probably don't happen. It's a famous quote, isn't it? It's Ezra Pound or someone, I never remember the quote, but my life was basically a series of terrible,
Who's it by?
frightening events, many of which never happened. I do it all the time.
You do this rumination, and it just takes over your whole persona, right?
Yeah. It's a Mark Twain, isn't it? It's a Mark Twain quote. The Ezra Pound one's very good, though. It's, why make the same mistake twice when there's so many new ones you could make?
Yeah, well,
I like that.
That's good enough.
Yeah. Music's good for so many reasons.
On that note, I would like to ask you about that whole theme of music, and the 3 songs that you've brought today have very much been about, storytelling and kind of every man's experience of the day-to-day. And I'm getting a real sense of music being a kind of companion to you, something that walks alongside you.
Yeah.
I wonder, what does that mean in the grand scheme of the idea of music and trauma, coming back to the title of this podcast?
For me, I can't analyse it or come up with a definitive reason why, but I think I could liken it to, if you watch a great play or you read an amazing book or you hear a great piece of music, you're plugged in to something that life's all about. You're plugged into something emotional. And when it's art and when it's good, you're not being force-fed the sanitised version, the shelf version, something of depth. And that doesn't need to be particularly musically brilliant either. It might be an amazing piece of classical music, it might be a punk track, it doesn't matter what it is, but if you resonate, which I seem to do, I feel more alive, and if I feel more alive, I feel like I'm of purpose and I'm connected. So it doesn't make me feel really, really sad, or it might bring up those emotions. I listened to that then and it made me feel that, but it makes me feel a shared thing, like, he's expressing something that I feel inside, or he's expressing something that I wish I could have had the skill to put in that middle 8 when he says that lyric or whatever it is, or played that solo or whatever it is that's going on. There's something else being shared, and that's good.
It is good. I was just wondering, because you've got a unique perspective when you've stood on so many stages with so many different artists and looked out to the thousands of people in the audience sometimes, and what is your experience of witnessing those people?
It's very, very powerful, and it needn't be that big stage either. It could be intimate, and you just realise that this is meaning something in this moment.
It's rarely just as simple as people have shown up to be entertained.
Yeah, we all know what it's like to stand in an audience and really connect with the moment.
Yeah.
I remember being in the Hammersmith Odeon, I was about 16, hearing Carlos Santana, and I remember just one moment felt like I was a tunnel.
There's like nobody there.
There was like no one there. I was just in a tunnel listening to this, thing from another world, you know, and that's beautiful, you know.
Yeah, it's a collective experience.
It
as
is
well,
a
isn't it?
collective experience, and there's just a mutual understanding. You think about all the bands you've played in, that connection alone, right? Just the people you play with.
Absolutely. I mean, I've been lucky, really. I've, you know, worked with people that have substance, you know, and, you know, I've done my fair share of sort of more pop stuff on records too, but it's always something in there, you know, and that's the other thing I've learned, is not to be judgy about it. That effect I'm getting from Hank Williams, someone might be getting that from, I don't know, something that I necessarily wouldn't, you know, you can't be sort of judgy about it.
It's true, isn't it?
People are responding for the right reason, you know.
Yeah, people are called to different things in different ways.
You know, I always cry in The Bodyguard when Whitney Houston runs into Kevin Costner's arms, right? And that is a contrived Hollywood moment, if ever there was one. But I tell you, I cry.
It matters to you.
Do you know what I mean? So there's no real
It's all
way
about how
of
we
defining
evolve.
this stuff. Try and remember you're plugged in at that point.
You're plugged in, so it's touching you and it's moving you because you matter, because you're plugged in, because you're part of all of this.
And you matter. But you might not be able to see it or accept it or quantify it, but
Yeah, and sometimes we just got to be a bit brave and we stick our hand up and say, hey, I need a moment, I need a bit of help. I think that's something that we've all begun to find really, really difficult to do.
you don't need to be going through ghastly stuff to have a struggle. But when you see people functioning, going through ghastly stuff, it's inspirational. When you see that and you go, oh God, if they can blooming function with that going on, you know, it doesn't negate the fact that you're in turmoil.
Do you agree with the idea that music helps you experience your feelings?
Yeah. It can unlock the door, can't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, you could think, okay, I've got that one sorted, and then something happens, a note gets played or a lyric gets said, and you're like, wow, I'm straight back there, you know.
Yeah, I find there's pieces of music that will just take me straight back to certain points.
Yes.
And that's sort of fascinating.
It is fascinating, because how does it do that? I know exactly what you mean. How does it do that?
It's whatever we haven't integrated from our
Mm-hmm.
childhoods. Those are our pain points, right? Which is why it matters so much that we sit in it. Because once we sit in it, it integrates, it disperses, as you said before.
Yeah.
And then that charge is less and less. And so our reactivity around it becomes less and less over time.
It's a tough thing to do, though, isn't it?
I've got a playlist called Grief, which is like when it comes, it hits hard, and all of the songs. But it's okay, you can feel it, you can have a good cry, or even if you can't bring yourself to tears, you can have an experience of that depth of sadness, and then you can release yourself, and then you can go get a cup of tea, and then maybe you can go back and do a little bit more. You can keep yourself safe in amongst it
It's
all.
dispersed, yeah.
Yeah, and so, you know, some of those things just, they never go away, but the suffering has eased, you know. It's like, sadness. You and I were talking about the ups and downs.
Completely.
They have to exist, but can we learn to just not see them as good and bad?
As my departed grandmother used to say to me on Christmas morning, she'd always have a glass of sherry on Christmas morning. And she'd go, oh, Adam, how are you then? And I'd say, oh, I'm all right, Nana. A bit fed up, whatever. And she'd go, oh, you know what? You can't have the sunshine without the rain.
Oh, bless.
And it's pretty true.
And I think there's wisdom in the ages as well, right?
I mean, she lived
our
through
elders know.
through wars, and
Can we just listen?
like a challenge to any father, really. But it's that thing of you just don't want to think of your kids suffering in any way, and there's going to be times when they're going to be
And that's what's supposed to
heartbroken
happen.
and stuff.
Yeah,
And I don't
they
know
have
what
to.
I want to be of use. You know, listen to them a lot, I guess. My dear friend is a lot older than me in years, and possibly young looking. I remember saying to him before I had kids, I know that moment. I've had that moment when, at whatever age, it happens a few times where you wake up and you feel, oh, help.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to bring someone into the world I don't really want to and he turned to me rather wonderfully, he said, but they're not you.
That's not yours.
They won't be you.
That's,
You know, there'll be a version of you,
Yeah.
but they won't, you know, and I thought that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Because it kind of sums it up, really.
Is there anything else that you'd like to bring today before we start to wrap up, Adam? Because this conversation has been such a beautiful experience for me.
Just to thank you, really, because it's been quite fun for me too. And you know, I don't always have massive amounts of time to focus in on, you know, like all of us, you know, there's stuff going on. And generally that's quite healthy because, you know, left to my own devices, I'd just wallow. But, you know, it's really nice to chat and talk about music and chat about good, important stuff. And hope, really, if anyone is tuning in, that they get something warm and
Yeah.
helpful from all of this.
We've certainly got a great deal from this today.
It's really important, and thank you for
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you,
inviting
Adam.
me to waffle on.
Yeah.
You know.
So, we know that people can find you on Spotify, Apple Music, Adam Phillips, and that beautiful album called Let It Go.
But yeah, it's Let It Go. It's got a picture of a big long highway in America
highway.
on it.
Strongly suggest people go and check that out.
Well, that's very kind.
Also, if you do find yourself enjoying any of these episodes, please consider making a small donation to the charities which we're supporting, which are Nordorf and Robbins Music Therapy or Youth Music UK. Links are on the show notes.
You said that there was a Wikipedia page.
There is a Wikipedia page on me,
So maybe
which
people
nearly all of it is true. There's something in there that isn't. There's something where they've confused me with some other.
Yeah, I get that as well.
Thank you,
Thank
Adam.
you.
And we're going to play out with, which song are we going to play out
That's a
with?
good point, isn't it? What should I play out with
What
off
would you
that
like to
record?
choose?
What do you think?
Well, you know which one I like.
We'll play that one then. Play A Song for Every Man.
Okay, so we're going to play out with A Song for Every Man by
Okay.
Adam Phillips, and we're so grateful. Cannot thank you enough.
Yeah,
thank you,
thank you,
everybody, for
Adam.
listening, whoever you are. Let's go and have some dinner.
Let's do that. Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
I've been up, I've been down, I've been lost, I've been found. Sometimes I'm steady, sometimes I fall, sometimes I feel like I'm numb to it all. Tell myself that I'm doing okay, work this job so I bring home my pay. This is my song, is it for every man? I'm a joker, I'm a fool. If you push me, I might lose my cool. I'm a sinner, I'm a saint. Learned my lesson, albeit too late. Tell myself that I'm doing just fine, but this train's at the end of the line. This is my song, is it for every man? Every man pays his dues. Every man got his demons to lose. All around us they plant the seeds of all of the things that we think that we need. Don't want diamonds and I don't want gold, just want someone to love me when I'm tired and old. Tell myself that I'm doing just fine, but this train's at the end of the line. This is my song, this is my song. This is my song, is it for every man?
Okay, here's the legal stuff. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. We are not licensed therapists, and this podcast is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. See you next time.